Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video about the upcoming full moon lunar eclipse in Cancer, at the very end of Cancer, on February 10th, 2017. This full moon will also be a lunar eclipse, and it's in the sign of Cancer, which is the sign ruled by the moon, and it's opposite Capricorn, where we have the sun at the very end. So the sun will be 28 Capricorn and the moon is 28 Cancer, and it's being eclipsed by Rahu at about 9 degrees of Leo. So it's a wide eclipse. It's not very tight. So those kinds of eclipses, not as direct, you would say, but it's going to make for a very direct solar eclipse in a couple weeks. But as it relates to this solar eclipse in Cancer, you know, the moon is the ruler of Cancer, so it's quite an emotional time, a time to really connect with the heart, go much deeper than all of the emotional fears, longings, fantasies. And again, you know, what happens when we have a full moon in Cancer, whether it's an eclipse or not, it's where we are trying to connect with the full power of the heart rather than get sucked into all of the emotions. It's very important to understand the difference. You know, the heart is the part of us that feels this connection to life. Our connection to the life force runs through the heart. And the way that interacts with the surface of the world, with our momentary experiences, is experienced as emotions. So emotions are literally our deeper feeling, divine consciousness, loving nature interacting with all of our experiences. This experience feels good, so okay, I want to do that. This one doesn't, so I want to avoid that. And these emotions get generated, and we gravitate toward ones that are good, and we want to avoid ones that are bad. Good, bad. We get in this whole play of kama and desire, and this maya of illusion through the emotions. And again, it's where we have a lot of attachment. The attachments come from the moon. They come from the heart. That's where our attachments live. They live in the heart. And so full moon in Cancer is like full on like emotion. And of course the eclipse means that the moon is near Rahu. It's near the north node, and it shows where the orbits of sun, moon, and earth line up in three-dimensional space. So it's not just that the moon is full, but it's also on the exact same plane, or at least very close to the exact same plane as the sun and the earth. So they're all lined up. And when we have these eclipses, when the bodies line up like that, it really aligns the energy around that, you know, around those characteristics in a more sort of cosmic way, because the nodes, which are the points that eclipse the sun and the moon, are literally that vortex space, that like harmonic convergence of those three bodies, sun, moon, and earth. So we have the lunar eclipse on February 10th, and then we have the solar eclipse 2 weeks later. Because that's, you know, then when the moon comes around and joins the other, joins the moon, when the moon comes around and joins the sun with the other end of the node, which is Ketu, that's when we have the solar eclipse. So we're in this portal, we're in the vortex of the eclipse cycle right now. So we're very close to the eclipse, and we can feel things getting eclipsed, a lot of energies getting eclipsed, a lot of hidden energies popping out. Of course, around the world, a lot of changes. In the US, we're now dealing with our new president, and trying to get our bearings, because there's just so much every day, policies that are conservative, and we're worrying about how many of our, travel rights, travel ban, cabinet appointment picks that seem unqualified, and so much intensity. This is the Capricorn cycle, because the sun is in Capricorn, moon is in Cancer, trying to bring together these practical and somewhat even fearful concerns of Capricorn with a more devotional quality of Cancer. And so the eclipse, as a sort of portal into the more cosmic dimensions of that moment, is what we're going to experience really this week, as we get closer and closer to it. So of course on the 10th, which is Friday, that's when we have the eclipse, Friday night on the West Coast. And it's very important also to look at the nakshatra, because it's going to happen in the nakshatra of Aslesha, which is the nakshatra of what are called the Naga, or the Sarpas, which are the serpent energies. And those serpent energies relate to fears, diabolical attachments, and like the poison in the mind, like the poison of those attachments that I mentioned. You see, Cancer is the sign of pure love, purity of heart, pure devotion. This is why it's a sign that's related to motherhood and pure love, where our love overruns the boundaries of those around us. Like a mother caring for small children and suckling them and nurturing them. We see that in the nakshatra of Pusha. And then the last nakshatra of Aslesha is like that sort of potential terror that the mother feels for the safety of the child. Like, what if the child dies? Would I even be able to survive? Like, that emotional intensity is a big part of Cancer, and it keeps the mother tangled up in the child's welfare. So literally, Aslesha is the entwiner. It's where we get entwined and tangled up in things. And we need to get tangled up in pure love and devotion. When we're tangled up in the purity of the heart, it takes us straight to the source. When we're tangled up in desire and trying to get something, and emotion, and especially like romantic desire, it can be very diabolical and poisonous in our mind. And this section of Cancer shows that. It shows where we can get sucked into this like whirlpool and get entangled and entwined in desire. And this is why in many ways that section of this zodiac is difficult for relationships. Like when people have moon, ascendant, other planets there in their natal chart, relationships are often quite painful, because there's like this all or nothing emotion of that section. If they're tangled up in something like caring for their children, then again that same intensity and emotional velocity takes them straight to the source, really straight to the source of love, beauty, and devotion. So this is the higher lesson of Cancer, is to connect with the purity of the heart, not with the confusing emotions that come from our desires and our desire to try to possess something of the world because we think it's going to give us some transcendent feeling. The only transcendent feeling is in here, not out here. This is all fleeting. And so literally, like, the emotions are meant to stay sensitive to other people. They're meant to allow us and our heart to stay sensitive to other people, like a mother. Again, think of the mother always being attentive to the child, and the sensitivity of the mother to the child is really what the emotions are for. The mother doesn't avoid difficult emotions if it's helping her protect her child. You see, emotions aren't bad when they're connected to the purity of the heart. And literally, we don't mind emotions that are difficult when we're connected to something we love. A mother who loves her child, damn right she wants to know if there's something unpleasant happening to the child. She doesn't mind taking it on but then again, for ourselves, when it's about our own desires, we want to avoid something that's unpleasant. You see, that's a different quality of existence. The mother's love for the child is dharma. It awakens dharma and love, which is fifth house things. Our personal desires for a partner and whatnot, that's kama. And it's not dharmic. It brings in attractions and aversions, like I said at the beginning. So this is a huge thing to try to work through in Cancer. This is a lot of what we're working through in the sign of Cancer, to connect to the purity of the heart, to sink into the depth of the ocean rather than ride the waves of emotion. And so this full moon in Cancer will have a lot of those indicators, and especially because it's an eclipse where the energy is very intense around these themes because of the nodes there creating this churning in the mind. It's a great time for you to really face your fears around these issues and harmonize that control and that conservatism and that calculating quality of Capricorn with the emotional, sensitive side of Cancer. A few other really important things that are happening. Venus is exalted. There's very elevated state of desire right now with Venus exalted and actually quite close to Mars, which is also in Pisces. So a lot of creativity, romance, desire, all those things I was just saying that we want to be aware of. Venus is saying, oh no, let's do some of that. Because Venus is exalted in Pisces, so we're feeling that sort of romance and passion, especially with Venus-Mars together in Pisces. That romance and passion are definitely still there. I've been doing quite a lot of readings based on this transit of Venus through Pisces. A lot of opportunity to, as they might say, up-level, which is the new kind of term, up-level our relationship to happiness and desire and devotion, and how those things are working, how those things evolve. In addition, Jupiter is retrograde. He just turned retrograde on the 5th or the 6th, right around there. And it shows a reversal and an opportunity to really reflect on what inspires you, what inspires your teachings, your higher vision and purpose. We've seen we can see a recalibration when Jupiter goes retrograde. He's retrograde about a third of the time, so that means about 1/3 of the time we're supposed to be questioning and reflecting on what inspires us. And then the other 2/3 of the time we're supposed to be practicing it, hopefully with devotion. So for the next few months, we're going to be reflecting on what inspires us, and whether or not, like for instance, our leaders are taking us where we want to go. We've seen recently here in the U.S. in the politics, when the president passed this travel ban, it got challenged in the courts. Right now, as I record this, it's getting challenged in the courts, which is definitely a function of the retrograde sort of quality. Jupiter is court, it's legal issues, and whether the ban gets reinstituted or not, it's already been a setback for the president, because it's not just that several states have joined the suit claiming that they have standing, that their citizens are being harmed, but also almost 100 of the most prolific tech companies in the US have signed on as well against this travel ban because it says it's hurting their employees, hurting their profits, could be unconstitutional, all these things. So again, Jupiter retrograde shows this. It shows, oops, wait a second, not so fast. You got to be legal. You got to do things that are legal. And so a lot of reflecting on where we're getting, what our leaders are doing. Of course, Saturn has also moved into Sagittarius, which happened around the end of January. And this Saturn in Sagittarius is, again, it's a shift away from the paranoia and triggering of Saturn in Scorpio, where it had been for the previous 2.5 years. And it's a transit into Sagittarius where people are going to be more inspired, they're going to be more committed to what inspires them, not to what they're afraid of. Because Saturn in Sagittarius is now saying, okay, we can't be manipulated now based on our fears. When you look at the politics last year, you had Democrats making you think Trump was the end of the world, and Trump making you think Democrats were the end of the world. That ain't going to work anymore. And even though it seems like the president now still is doing that, well, actually it's happening on both ends. It's still happening, at least collectively, with the rhetoric, like the end of the world, because we have this president, and then the president saying, well, it's going to be at the end of the world if we don't do what I say. There's still a backdrop of this. But you're also seeing an enormous hope and inspiration and people wanting to commit to an inspired future. That includes both, let's say, people that are inspired that we have this president and people who are inspired to be protesting against him and pushing back against him and saying, no, we demand more. So again, this has been a radical shift. It happened literally, I don't know why I can't remember, I think it was January 20th. Or no, the 26th, I believe. It was like a week after the inauguration, it had officially moved. And so, again, you see a shift in our commitment and our focus, which will be that way off and on between now and January 2020. People are going to be more committed to what inspires them. And we're seeing that now as well. So these are some important backdrops and backstories to this solar eclipse in Cancer. I'm sorry, lunar eclipse. I have this binary dyslexia. Solar and lunar, or one or the other, I can easily mix them up. So if you're interested to see how this lunar eclipse in Cancer will affect you, you should join my member site for only 50 cents. You get to see this personally in your chart. I'll be doing a live update on Friday where I discuss this for all 12 signs and do another update, a live update. I do 2 live updates per week for my members of the Astrology Training Lab. You get a 2-week trial, only 50 cents. You get to try it for 2 weeks. If you don't want to stay, you can cancel at any moment. But it's also daily forecast. Every day you get a forecast based on the Panchanga. There's a Facebook group where you can have conversations, active and lively forum. And you get 8 hours of classes that can help you read your chart, understand how astrology works, and all kinds of other cool stuff. So there's a link here for you to check out. A lot of members, more than 100 members, and it would be 2 or 3 times that if I talked about it all the time, which I'm going to start doing more of that. But anyway, I'm sure you'd really enjoy that because it's really crucial to know not just that it's a lunar eclipse in Cancer, but how does it affect Aries person differently than it affects a Scorpio person? Or how does it affect Gemini? In Gemini, it's happening in the 2nd house. In Pisces, it's happening in the 5th house. Totally different. And it is totally different. So if you want to see how that's going to affect your sign, 50 cents, you can try it for 2 weeks. You'll also get daily forecasts. You'll get 8 hours of classes just for trying. And you can cancel anytime you want. You can cancel before you ever even get charged. It's about $1 a day if you want to stay a member. I have people who stay members for years. I've had people that have been members for 6 years. So besides that, I hope you're well and have a great day.